The senator from Connecticut.
As we dispense with the quorum call.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. The U.S. Constitution and the American people give the American president vast power. The power to decide how billions of dollars are spent, the power to oversee the entire federal criminal justice system, the power to sell arms around the world, to deploy millions of American soldiers, to negotiate peace treaties. We give him these powers, the Constitution gives the president these powers so that he uses them on our behalf to deploy that vast power of the American presidency to increase our quality of life, to protect the American people. We place immense trust in the president not to abuse these incredible authorities that are given to him. But Donald Trump is abusing that authority in ways that honestly shock the conscience. Donald Trump is using the power of his office not to help or protect us, but to enrich himself and his family. He is doing it publicly, brazenly, out in the open. He is, in effect, daring us, specifically daring the legislative branch, the co-equal branch, to stop him. Nearly 3 weeks ago, news broke that the White House had dialed up one of our key allies in the Middle East, the government of Qatar, and it asked that the Qataris give the president a luxury jet that is reportedly worth upwards of $400 million. Now, the nicest jet that I have ever been on is Air Force One, and it's really nice. But the jet that Trump wants to make Air Force One, that he's asking for from the Qataris, makes Air Force One, the current version, look like a tenement house. The Qatari jet that he is asking for, its interior is designed by a famed French designer, complete with a flowing grand staircase, sculpted ceilings, plush carpeting, leather couches, gold furnishings. The plane has been called the world's most luxurious private jet. It includes 9 bathrooms, 5 kitchens, swanky lounges, and a master bedroom suite. Now, the arrangement that Trump proposed to the Qataris would briefly pass the jet through U.S. government hands, but only as reported for just a year or two before it would end up belonging personally to Donald Trump. The U.S. government would essentially be a straw purchaser. The real owner of the jet, for all practical purposes, would be Donald Trump. Now, this kind of gift, a $400 million luxury jet, it has no precedent in American history. No president has ever asked for, never mind been given, a $400 million gift from a foreign nation. Why? Well, because presidents know that that's crossing a line. That is a massive abuse of their power. The leverage that presidents have over other countries that they could use to ask for millions of dollars in gifts, it's supposed to be used to benefit the nation's security, not to enrich themselves. But also, it's just illegal. There is a very specific clause in the Constitution that forbids this kind of gift from a foreign government to a president. And this body is supposed to be in charge of helping to enforce the Constitution. Our founders wrote that clause into the Constitution because they worried about this exact situation where a president is using his authority like a monarch or a king to make himself the richest person in the world. Now, the Qatar government feels like it had little choice but to say yes when asked for this $400 million gift. Again, briefly to the U.S. government, but really, for all practical purposes, to the president. They felt like they had no choice precisely because an American president has so much power. They have so much leverage, especially over a vulnerable country in the Middle East. In this case, Qatar really needs to keep the United States on its side. Middle East politics, they shift really quickly, and during Trump's first term, when the Qataris were not close to Trump, they paid a price. They found themselves badly and dangerously isolated in the region. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, if you remember, effectively ganged up to blockade Qatar. And Trump gave that move implicit consent. Qatar, frankly, is willing to pay a very high price to avoid that fate again. But Qatar also has things that it wants from the United States. No Middle East country has ever been allowed to buy MQ-9 Reaper drones. These are the most lethal armed drone that America makes. We have previously judged that the region is just too volatile to allow any nation to possess the Reaper. And arguably, there's an arms control regime that doesn't allow us to transfer that technology. But Qatar wanted to break that precedent. And of course they did. They wanted to be the first nation to have the Reaper technology, and Trump seemed willing to go along. So a $400 million gift to the president, again, that the president was asking for, it's a relatively small price to pay for that kind of military edge over your rivals in the region. But there was one more reason that Qatar had no choice but to give Trump, or at least they felt they had no choice but to give Trump this wildly illegal gift. Because Trump had made it clear to the whole region, to the whole of the Gulf region in the Middle East, that he was for sale and that preferential American treatment was for sale. And if Qatar didn't pay, another country would. Qatar wasn't going to be protected, frankly, by a collective refusal of Trump's extortion in the region, and they had only to look next door to the United Arab Emirates to see how high the price was getting to win Trump's affection. At the exact moment that Trump was leaning on Qatar to give him the luxury plane, he was also leaning on UAE to give him not a $400 million gift, but a $2 billion gift. And he didn't have to lean hard. Just before the Qataris committed to give Trump the plane, an investment firm backed by the Emirati government and chaired by the Emirati government's national security advisor shocked the world and announced that it would use Trump's brand new stablecoin, this is a form of cryptocurrency, in a $2 billion investment deal that this investment fund, essentially an arm of the UAE government, was doing. And because of that $2 billion deal, overnight, Trump's stablecoin became one of the 5 largest stablecoins in the world, massively inflating the president's wealth due to this one single investment. Now, this wasn't an ordinary investment decision. Out of all the stablecoin companies in the world, the Emiratis chose what at the time was a brand new, relatively small crypto company run by 2 people who had very little background in the industry. Why? To put money directly into the pocket of Donald Trump. On the website of World Liberty Financial, that's the company that is issuing the Trump coin, they don't hide the fact that this isn't the Trump kids that own the business. On the website, it states 60% of this company, World Liberty Financial, is owned by an entity affiliated with Donald J. Trump. But it gets even more corrupt because World Liberty Financial's other co-founder is a guy named Zach Witkoff, who, not coincidentally, is the son of Steve Witkoff, Trump's top Middle East advisor. The Trumps could have picked anybody in the world to run this stablecoin business with, but they chose the son of the Middle East envoy, just so that when they were going around asking for money in the region, it was crystal clear that if you were doing business with World Liberty Financial, you were doing business with the people in the Trump administration who make all the decisions about the Middle East. So in one fell swoop, the Emiratis can put money into the family that controls the White House and the family that deploys and decides Middle East policy. Now, just like the Qataris, the Emiratis want something in return too. Their ask was for the U.S. to remove restrictions on selling the most advanced American-made computer chips to the UAE. The restrictions have been in place under Republican and Democratic administrations for really good reason. The UAE has a very close, too close relationship with China. And the U.S. is always rightly worried that if we gave advanced technology to UAE, it would pretty quickly potentially fall into the hands of the Chinese. Now, this would be really bad, especially regarding these microchips, these computer chips, because these chips power the most advanced and proprietary American AI systems. Losing these chips to China could cost us the lead to China on the global AI race. The UAE also wanted the United States to look the other way while they help fund a death spiral civil war in Sudan. The UAE is the main supplier of weapons to the worst of the two parties that are involved in the brutal, catastrophic, deadly civil war in Sudan. And they want the United States to keep giving them weapons, most recently asking for a resupply of Chinook helicopters, even as they use their military prowess to destroy Sudan. Now, the end of this chapter of the story will not shock you. In coordination with the $400 million luxury plane and the $2 billion investment in Trump crypto, Qatar got sign-off on buying the Reaper drones, and Steve Witkoff, father of the co-owner of World Liberty Financial, marched over to UAE right before the president was showing up himself and announced that the United States would, in fact, magically lift those restrictions on the microchips. And just as unsurprisingly, Trump announced that he'll sell the Chinooks to Abu Dhabi with no requirement that they stop fueling the war in Sudan. The blatant exchange of U.S. national security secrets, our most sensitive drone technology and our most sensitive chip technology, in exchange for cash into Donald Trump's pocket, is perhaps the most brazenly corrupt act in the history of the American presidency. And we cannot normalize it just because he is doing it out in the open in public. The Senate, which is given the responsibility by the Constitution to be a co-equal branch with the president, we have independent responsibility to uphold and protect the Constitution, to set American foreign policy. We cannot pretend this is not happening. We cannot look the other way while the entire moral foundation of our foreign policy is being shattered. Republicans can't ignore this just because the president is their party's leader. We have that independent obligation to protect the Constitution, which clearly says that these gifts are illegal, whether they're going to a Democratic president or a Republican president. We have a responsibility to our taxpayers to stop a president from immorally enriching himself using the power we give him to help himself instead of helping us. What makes this moment so dangerous is that both UAE and Qatar, but especially Qatar, are key partners of the United States. They aren't our adversaries. They are our allies. They're imperfect allies, but they are our allies. In fact, I've been down on this floor in the past arguing on behalf of Qatar and the U.S.-Qatar relationship when other senators have tried to denigrate the Qataris' contributions to regional peace. The Qataris have been a critical partner of ours on so many important issues. It's worth saying that. There's no way that we would have been able to evacuate 124,000 people from Afghanistan on the eve of the Taliban takeover without Qatar's help. The Qataris today host thousands of U.S. troops at Al Udeid Air Force Base. It's the largest base in the region. The Qataris are critical mediators who have helped us send back-channel messages to secure the release of American hostages or negotiate peace deals. There's no question that Qatar is a country that helps stabilize the region and often is indispensable in protecting U.S. interests overseas. So I want to cultivate and strengthen that important relationship. I honor that the work that the United States and UAE does all around the region to try to track down and hold accountable terrorists. These are real partnerships. But our relationship with Qatar and the UAE, it can't be a corrupt relationship. We can't sell drones to Qatar, our friend, if our friend is willing to take part in Trump's corruption. We cannot sell weapons to the UAE, our ally, if our ally is willing to take part in Trump's corruption. we'll have a chance this week to make this clear, that the United States Senate will not facilitate, will not grease the wheels of Trump's corruption of our foreign policy. We can do that by voting to block these two arms sales, to Qatar and to the UAE. Not permanently, but until both countries commit to deny Trump's requests for personal enrichment as part of the bilateral relationship. That's why Senators Van Hollen, Kaine, Schatz, and Sanders have joined me in two resolutions to disapproval for those Reaper drone sales and the Chinook sale, and we'll have a vote on these two resolutions as early as this week. President Trump has declared that U.S. foreign policy is for sale. And the opening bids from two of the richest nations in the world is a $2 billion investment in Trump's crypto company from the UAE and a $400 million luxury plane, essentially for the president's permanent personal use. At the exact same moment that Trump is trying to push a bill through this Congress that is going to ruin a lot of people's lives, cutting off their health care or leaving kids without food at night, he's making himself even richer by trading American national security policy for gifts. And to make it worse, trading away U.S. national security secrets in exchange. The net result is an American public that is poorer and weaker and less secure, and a president who is richer. It's corrupt. It's corrupt. We've never, ever in the history of this country allowed for a president to do this. Never in the 250 years that our republic has been on the earth has a president ever asked another nation to enrich himself in this way in exchange for preferential treatment from the U.S. taxpayers. If you're a Republican or Democratic senator, you have to see this as unprecedented, as terrible for our nation, as corruption. American foreign policy should not be for sale. If we let these arms sales go through, we are greasing the wheels of that corruption. If we vote for these resolutions of disapproval, at least we have a shot to stop it. I yield the floor.